Hi, welcome to Chapter 6, Social and Personality Development in Infancy. Today we'll look at theories of social and personality development, attachment, personality, temperament, and self-concept, and effects of non-parental care. These are the objectives that we'll be covering. If you go to open the regular PowerPoint, you'll be able to open the links that are attached with it as well. Now, first of all, let's take a look at the psychoanalytic perspective with Freud and Erikson. Now, Freud said that the psychosexual stage is related to an infant attempts at need satisfaction. There's what's called the oral stage, which derives from satisfaction from their mouth. This baby always puts everything in their mouth. The mother-child bond forms what's called a symbiotic relationship between mother and child. Fixation could later result in swearing and nail biting if this stage wasn't established. Now, Erikson comes up with what's called a psychosocial stage, in which attending to infants' needs and social development is important. So helping the infant get his or her needs met consistently, social relationships go beyond just feeding. The symbiotic relationship helps develop the infant's sense of both attachment and separation, thus trust versus mistrust. With adoption and development, there's non-institutionalized children adopted before the age of 6 months are generally indistinguishable from non-adopted children in security, attachment, cognitive development, and social adjustment. However, children adopted at later ages with histories of institutionalization or other abuse or neglect tend to have more cognitive and emotional problems, such as reactive attachment disorder that may develop. Parenting may be more challenging if the child has not come to terms with those psychosocial stages of mistrust versus mistrust. Okay, you decide. Let's say you adopt a child. Do you think raising an adopted child differs from raising one's own biological child? Or do you believe that raising an adopted child is more complex than raising one's own biological child? And taking from your text, it depends on how those first 2 years of development work out. Okay, I forgot to mention in Harlow's experiment with the two monkeys. Notice that the monkey attached to the soft and cuddly model of the mom, even though the old wire model of the monkey is the one that gave him food. So that need for bonding is very important. Harlow's experiment also found out that if the monkey did not receive enough nurturing, it really affected their what's that called? Their innate abilities. There's a certain point of no return where those monkeys do not learn basic instincts needed for survival. So this attachment is very, very important. Now, synchrony is like a conversation. It's an emotional dance between mom and a child. Synchrony is an opportunity for a parent, infant development of mutual interlocking pattern of attachment behaviors. It takes practice over time to develop until each participant follows the other. This highly synchronous 6 to 8 month old infants, they have larger vocabularies. At age 2, they have higher intelligence scores at age 3. So this bonding between parent is crucial towards development. Next are theories of development and personality. John Bowlby's view is the propensity to make strong emotional bonds to particular individuals is a basic component of human nature. It's already present in germinal form in the neonate. That's from Bowlby, 1988. While Bowlby and Ainsworth saw mothers as the most likely persons to have an attachment, others could be attached as well. Such a relationship has survival value because it ensures that the infant will receive nurturance. The relationship is built and maintained by an interlocking repertoire of instinctive behaviors that create and sustain proximity between parent and child. The first 2 years of life constitute a sensitive period for attachment in human infants. If this attachment is not made, it really affects their future relationships. Here's a nice video about the importance of attachment in infants. A mother's bond with her infant. The bond is dependent on what's called synchrony, which is that relationship that's developed between mom and child. Mothers typically provide more routine caregiving than fathers do. Fathers do more throwing the baby around, more of a rougher type play. After the first few weeks, mother talks to and smiles more at their babies. When mothers observe or interact with their infants, their bodies actually release oxytocin, which is a hormone that's correlated with empathy and physical relaxation. Now, fathers bond. The relationship depends on what's called synchrony. Fathers have the same repertoire as mothers do. In early weeks, fathers touch, talk to, and cuddle the baby. After the first few weeks, fathers begin to spend more time playing with the baby, and it tends to be more physical, roughhousing type behavior. Watching and interacting with babies stimulates what's called vasopressin in fathers, and that's a hormone linked to arousal, aggression, and physical activity. So it might not just be culture that impacts the interpretation of study. It might be biological too, since there's a different hormone that's released when a father's watching and interacting with the baby, having a different reaction than the oxytocin, which creates relaxation. So it's part cultural, part biological. Which causes which, we're not sure. So next is characteristics of attachment. It's important that the baby has what's called a safe haven, a secure base, proximity maintenance, and separation distress. Let's look at these different characteristics. First of all, Bowlby has what's called 4 phases in establishing attachment. First is non-focused orienting and signaling. This is from birth through 3 months. This is where the baby uses an innate sense of behavior patterns to signal needs. Proximity promoting behaviors. And then number 2, focus on 1 or more figures. That's from 3 to 6 months. And then the next one is a secure base behavior. That's from 6 to 24 months, where there's proximity seeking behaviors. The most important person used as a safe base for explorations. And finally, the internal model, which is 24 months and beyond. A child can imagine how her behavior would affect the bonds with her caregiver. She smiles more at people who regularly care for her. So how would you recognize each of Bowlby's phases? What behaviors would you expect to see? Now remember, each one of these has different symbols or different things. Next is attachment behaviors. Once clear attachment is established, related behavior begins appearing. Stranger anxiety, such as clinging to the mother when strangers are present. Separation anxieties, when infants cry and protest when separate from their mothers. Social references is where the infant uses cues from the caregiver. Facial expressions help the baby to figure out novel situations. It helps to learn to regulate emotions. Separation anxiety occurs between 6 to 8 months. It rises in frequency about 12 to 16 months, and then it declines. Now, social referencing begins at about 10 months. Here are some good videos to watch on separation anxiety across cultures and on social referencing. It's kind of cute to see those little babies. Next, Mary Ainsworth talks about, it's called the strange situation. And with this, there's a series of 8 episodes played in a laboratory, children between 12 and 18 months. There's scenarios with the mother, then with a mother and a stranger, and then alone with a stranger, and then completely alone for a few minutes. And then the infant is reunited with the mother, and then alone again, and then with the stranger again, and reunited with the mother. And the reunion episodes provide the best assessment of attachment strength. What they'll find is that the baby either has a secure attachment, or insecure avoidant attachment, or insecure ambivalent attachment, or insecure disorganized attachment. And we'll go over each of these. Attachment stability is dependent on the consistency of the child's life. It's influenced by major upheavals. Internal models elaborated from year 1 until age 4 or 5. Now, internal models are pictures of their relationships with parents and other key adults. By age 5, a child has clear internal models of the mother, a self-model, and models of relationships. Now, with caregivers and attachment, several characteristics influence attachment process. First of all, there's emotional availability. The caregiver who is able and willing to form emotions and attachments. Its contingent responsiveness has to do with caregivers who are sensitive to the child's cues and respond appropriately. Now, both are essential to the formation of secure attachment. Economically or emotionally distressed parents may be too distracted by their problems. This prevents investments of emotions in the parent-infant relationship. Now, back to insecure attachments. Well, of course, insecure avoidant attachments, where the mother is the child rejects or regularly withdraws from her, and mother is overly intrusive or overly stimulating. Now, this insecure ambivalent attachment, the primary caregiver is inconsistently or unreliably available to the child. With the insecure disorganized attachment, that's likely when the child has been abused or when the parent has unresolved childhood trauma. When a child's family environment or life circumstances are relatively consistent, the security or insecurity also seems to remain consistent. When a child's family changes, for example, there's a divorce, the attachment may change as well. Now here's a nice little video on experiment attachment classifications, and see if you can guess the right attachment for each situation. Now to do that, you'll have to open up the PowerPoint, the separate PowerPoint that I provided for you, not this one. The links don't work on this one because it's actually a YouTube video. Attachment, other caregiver characteristics influencing secure attachment. There's married parents produce more secure attachments than cohabitating or single parents. Depressed mothers interact less. So psychiatric illness, mental health can make a difference. Higher education produces better attachments. Poverty is usually harder on attachments because there's less time spent with the child. Older mothers display more sensitive caregiving skills. Children of depressed mothers are more likely to display aggression and social withdrawal in school. So the securely attached are more sociable, the more positive in relationships with friends, they're less clingy, they're less aggressive, they're more emotionally mature. As a child continues to adolescence, they're more likely to be leaders and have higher self-esteem. So this attachment in those first 2 years is key to development as an adolescent. Attachment quality and its consequences. So increased sociability throughout early, middle, and late adulthood, the influences on parenting behavior, creates a foundation for future social relationships. And there's a nice little video on emotion regulation in early childhood. This shows cross-cultural comparisons of attachment categories. If you notice that the highest in secure is Great Britain, Sweden, and the United States is about there. Lowest is China in secure attachment. So although the percentage of infants in each of the attachment categories varies somewhat across cultures, secure attachment is the most common type of relationship between infants and caregivers in all societies. And this is based on Uzendorn and Kuhnberg in 1988. Next is looking at personality and temperament. Personality involves stable patterns on how people relate to those around them. Temperament is basic behavioral and emotional predispositions. So we're going to take a look at a few studies on temperament. How are these theories alike and different? Thomas and Chess studied what's called activity level, rhythmicity, approach, withdrawal, adaptability to new experiences. They studied the threshold of responsiveness, intensity of reaction, quality of mood, distractibility, and persistence. Now, other theorists, such as Buss and Plomin, have identified three dimensions, what's called the activity level, emotionality, and sociability. Now, Kagan asserts that shyness is based on differing thresholds for arousal in the parts of the brain that control responses to uncertainty, the amygdala and the hypothalamus. Dopamine and serotonin genes that regulate these chemicals fail to protect a child from overstimulation. Okay, next is heredity. The basic differences in behaviors are related to underlying neurological process. Neurotransmitters regulate brain responses to new information and unusual situations. It's still difficult to demonstrate conclusively that neurological differences are either cause or effect. Next, we take a look at temperament. Sandra Scar used what's called niche picking. Thomas and Chess talk about what's called the goodness of fit. In other words, that the child's temperament fits well with the environment that they're growing up in. Sometimes there's some environments that do not fit well with different temperaments. Synchronous relationships, parental influence with children at temperamental extremes. Synchronous relationships may modify heredity effects. Parental influence is greater with children at the extremes of the temperament continuum. So the better you parent with these children at the extreme, the better that kid's going to turn out. Next is gender differences. Temperamental stereotyping may influence the quality of the parent-infant relationship. The temperamental differences between boys and girls are much smaller than the difference perceived by parents and other adults. Yet behavioral geneticists argue that these differences are inborn. Next is in what ways might stereotypes influence the methods that researchers use to study gender differences in temperament? How do differences between men and women, which have evolved over many years, contribute to expectations about how male and female infants differ in temperament? In other words, in your view, do adults engage in what might be called backward generalization from adults to infants with regard to their opinions about the existence of gender differences early in life? This would be a good question I might use for the threaded discussion. Okay, let's talk about personality, temperament, and self-concept. First of all, we have what's called the subjective self, the objective self, and the emotional self. And we're going to take a look at these three parts. Now, during the same months which infants are developing an internal model of attachment and exploring their own unique temperament, they are also developing a unique sense of self. What implications does this have for parents and caregivers? Think about just how that how parents and caregivers' behavior can affect their sense of self and their temperament. Okay, first of all, there's what's called the subjective self. This is awareness by the child that he or she is separate from others, and it endures over time. Usually by 8 to 12 months, at the same time as object permanence. Remember when the object would be out of view and so far the object no longer exists. Later they figure out it does still exist even though they don't see it. Objective self is a toddler comes to understand that he or she is an object in the world. The self has properties such as genders. The objective self, the self also figures out gender, size, a name, and qualities like shyness or boldness, coordination or clumsiness. It is this self-awareness that's the hallmark of the me or the self. Lewis and Brooks used what's called the Rouge test or the mark test. And what they did is at 21 months of age, they found out they have the child in front of the mirror, and then they would put some rouge or a mark on the baby's face. And when the baby looked in the mirror and noticed the mark different, then they had a sense of self-awareness because they knew that was them that was having that mark on their face. And that's kind of a cool experiment. If you want to see that, this little video right here shows the baby reacting to the little mark on their face. Okay, next about the emotional self. First, babies learn to identify changes in emotional expression. It starts at 2 to 3 months. Then infants can read and respond to facial expressions. That's around 7 months. Babies interpret emotional perceptions of others in order to anticipate and guide actions. They tend to respond to a much wider variety of emotions and distinguish among happy, surprised, angry, interested at around 1 year of age. 1 year of age. Then they start perceiving emotions of others, and that helps babies to anticipate others' actions and guide their own behavior. True or false? Non-parental quality care is beneficial for all children. In 1970, 18% of U.S. married women with children under 6 were in the labor force. Now, 64% are in the workforce, at least part-time. So at least half of children under 12 months are cared for by someone else, at least part-time. So is it beneficial for all children? The question is, it depends. Here's the overview. Arrangements of daycare vary considerably. The time in daycare varies as well. Some children are in multiple care settings. Younger children are less likely to receive non-parental care. In this video didn't work. Sorry, I tried to load it up and it didn't work. Let's see. This chart here basically shows all the different types of care in the United States. There's center-based care, non-relative care, father care, grandparent care, other relative, and mother care. Notice mother care is one of the lowest percents. So the non-parental care arrangements for children under 6 in the United States, children younger than 6 years of age whose mothers are employed or cared for in a variety of settings. Okay, now let's look at high-quality daycare has beneficial effects, especially for children from poor families. Later scores in reading and math are related to daycare entry age and poverty. The difference in vocabulary, white middle-class children have smaller vocabularies after entering daycare. This difference is not found in black families. Children from poor families who began daycare, that's my dog, he's getting a drink of water. Cooper, are you thirsty? Where's that dog? He's thirsty. You know, do my baby talk to my dog. Okay. Children from poor families who began daycare before age 1 have higher reading and math scores at the start of school than do children of middle-class families who entered daycare in infancy. Are you done yet? Oh, you're thirsty, doggy. Oh my gosh. Come here, Cooper. Come here. Come here, Cooper. Cooper. Let's see, does this dog have attachment disorder? Come here, doggy. Look at the camera. Right here. Okay. Effects on social development. In 1985, Jay Belsky sounded the alarm about negative effects of daycare on children under the age of 1 year of age. Infant daycare has negative effects on attachment if started when the child is under 1 year of age. Heightened risk for insecure attachment. Parents whose behavior are associated with insecure attachment have children who are negatively affected. So I guess if you don't bond with a child at an early age, then it's a problem. Next, there's some research challenges. There's complex interaction among numerous variables in all care types. Non-parental care varies in quality and structure. Maternal attitudes toward care arrangements vary, and the effects of multiple care settings can be difficult to separate. And then non-parental care may induce child stress, causing higher levels of cortisol. It may affect the child's brain development. Boys are more securely attached to caregivers in non-parental care, but differences between children in parental and non-parental care are very small. So when you're choosing a daycare, what do you think about? Usually you want to have a low teacher-to-child ratio, small group size, clean, colorful space where it's adapted to child play, and then a daily plan, sensitive caregivers, and knowledgeable caregivers. So the final question is, in the story is Ray is going into daycare. What do you think Ray should do to ease his son's transition from family care to child care so it's less traumatic? One of the criteria is sensitive caregivers. What kinds of caregiver behaviors might indicate that they're sensitive? So this ends our unit. Have a great evening. Have a good week. Thank you.